the whole idea as to vis-a-vis is Willie Lynch, is the Willie Lynch letter, is the Willie Lynch letter valid? I thought this was a good question that you meanie hotspot said. Mention a couple of things, but let's just deal with the second thing about the video is so needed. Give thanks. Is there any way though to establish the validity of this letter, of the Willie Lynch letter? Have been trying to do so for years now. I know some people who got into an argument because a couple of sisters said that their professor said that the letter was created well after the time of slavery, and that it was created to stir up deep thought of the aftermath thereof. The argument stopped once they said that their professor nor anyone knows who wrote the letter. But for years now, I still wonder. Very interesting, very interesting. First of all, let's just ask the question, is the Willie Lynch letter valid? And I think we need to put this out there because perhaps there's somebody out there or someone's out there that got a little more information about this. But it's really more the question of whether the Willie Lynch letter really describes a valid situation. You understand? A valid strategy to destroy or at least to enslave perpetually a people. You understand? To basically create a perpetual slave mentality. This is why our response initially was verify the validity question. A professor? Well, you know, I'm not saying every professor is bad or every professor is good or honest or whatever like that, but the professor works for a system of things. You have to understand that when professors have gotten out of line, and many of them in even just with the environmental climate kind of thing, and after the 9/11, a lot of them who were otherwise, you know, well-known, upstanding, appreciated professors, they lost their jobs if they stood by their convictions, even though they had the evidence, they had the proof. We know about many black professors and even white, but let's just talk about some of our people professors who got fired because they were bringing into the academic environment, into the school system, and you have to look at what particular school we're speaking about, because different schools were established by certain secret societies and secret related societies, and originally they were, you know, these universities and colleges were established to perpetuate, you understand, the land owning rich white male class of folk. You understand? And then as it had to adapt, therefore they adapted a lot of other things. It's one thing that, you know, the system has shown us is their adaptability. You understand? But the question is, who will verify? Who's going to verify? And who will second the verification? For example, they said that, you know, years ago that black folks never done anything. You know, some still hold to that illogical, you know, position, and yet facts and figures and evidence has come out that has disproven, and some of them still stick to it, like Egypt. They say Egypt wasn't part of Africa. This is when I grew up. You understand that was the popular thing. Egypt is not part of Africa. There were people who were so-called upstanding professors, so forth and so on, who were saying Egypt is not part of Africa, and it gave us the impression that Egypt wasn't in Africa until we looked at the map, and we saw Egypt is in Africa until we looked at the wall paintings and the hieroglyphs and the statues and the carvings and everything else. And these people look awfully black. I mean, they don't look like everybody. Everybody don't look like everybody else. You know what I mean? Everybody has unique features, so forth and so on. But you could tell that the Egyptians, if they wanted to paint themselves white, they had the colors to paint themselves white. If they wanted to, blonde hair, blue eyes, and all that, so forth and so on. So I heard the same thing too from others. But the fact is, in the reality of the contents of what Willie Lynch actually is speaking of, and the living history, you understand, when we can actually take this so-called questionable letter and documentation, and we can get the evidence that there was some sort of preconceived, premeditated. This was premeditated. It didn't just slavery. They tried to teach us that slavery just happened to happen like that. You know, it just happened to, you know, almost like America and New World Order. But now we're getting to learn